What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Community Farm Alliance podcast. I'm your host for the Blackberry series. My name is Vaughn Barnes, and I have with me today the legend, Jim Embry, out of Richmond, Kentucky, of Atrus Ballew Farms. Jim, tell us, how you doing out there today?
And I'm wonderful, man. Every day is a blessing, and it's wonderful to be in your presence. And thank you for scheduling this time for us to have a conversation. And I look forward to the questions and being able to share things that your listening audience or our audience will be informed and inspired by.
Man, you have so much information out on the internet right now. There was a video that I watched of you. I think, man, you was either in California, Hawaii. I mean, you travel everywhere.
Yes, sir.
And you mentioned the word
Grio.
Rio.
Yeah. Grio is an African term that symbolizes that person who was entrusted with the knowledge of his or her people. That person, through oral history, different from a written record, that person was able to tell the story of his or her people, their tribe, their village. It can go back thousands of years. That's a griot, and I would say that most indigenous peoples all around the world had a similar person, because before the advance of writing systems, then humans relied on their memory to carry these stories of our human maturation, carry the story of our saga and our journey. So I use that oftentimes for myself. I recall speaking at one of the STEM programs that my daughter runs out at Stanford University,
Right.
and I did a little rap tune, okay, as I began that, calling myself the OG, and I had I forget now the exact words, but I call myself the OG, which is original gardener, original griot, and my grandkids call me, as my kids call me Baba, so my grandkids call me Grandbaba. So I use the word, the griot was in that kind of a sense of what an OG is. So I take great pride in being, again, given by my family that responsibility of being the griot within this, what we call now the 21st century.
And then I guess with that role, it's your job to then pass on the stories to the next generation.
Absolutely. Yes, that's so important, and a lot of our work, I recall you had laid a question out, here today about, discussion topics about the future. And in my view, our future is a sustainable, just future, is based upon how well we remember and how well we embrace these ancestral vibrations, the traditional ways that humans employed for thousands of years, okay, for thousands of years. So it's important to pass on these kinds of stories. I recall, Vaughn, honestly, my mother was, before I was a griot, my mother was a griot, and before she was a griot, her grandfather, who was born in enslaved condition, and at 4 or 5 years old, and then his father fought in the Civil War and also died in the Civil War. But so I come from a long line of folk in the family who accepted the responsibility of being the family griot. But I must say, when I was young, 10, 12 years old, I'd sit around like we're doing now this evening, family meetings and family gatherings, and we're eating, and grandmom's making quilts, and we're just sitting around talking, and
Right.
Mom would tell these stories, okay? And I would hear Mom these stories 8, 10, sometimes 12 times a year, okay? And over 10 years. Look, so I would tell my mother, I said, look here, I said, Mama, I heard that story 10 times this year already. I've heard it the last 10 years of my life, okay? I would ask her, when do we get a different story. And she said, son, says, one day you're going to be thankful to me, okay, that I'm telling these stories so you can remember them. And now I know what she means.
Mm. Now, in that same at that same time, what you saying that you understand it now, what is the difference now for you? Because you mentioned this in one of those videos, not and you said you want people to come to the farm and hear you.
Yes.
Why now do you feel that there's a
Oh,
difference in importance?
well, hey, I'm a much, you know, one of the things that humans do, we mature. I had mentioned I was 10 or 12 years old, and when you're
Right.
that age as an adolescent, you think you know everything, and you have a kind of rambunctious, know-it-all attitude. And that's just a common aspect of that maturation of us as a human species. But it didn't take long for me to understand that at 15 years old in 1964, I marched with Dr. King at the March on Frankfurt. I was the state youth president for the NAACP. And I had been a part of CORE since I was 10 years old. I was on picket lines, being spit on, being cussed out. So at a young age, I was brought into a kind of leadership role because my mother, okay, was the CORE president. But again, her father, her grandfather, again, who was enslaved. And after emancipation, his mother inspired him to go to Berea College in 1879. So we've been, that's why I say I'm like an agrarian intellectual activist, as was my mother, grandparents, and great-grandparents. But my great-grandfather went to Berea in 1879, and he was there the same year as a guy named James Bond. That's not, Sean Connery in 007. That's the James Bond who was the grandfather of Julian Bond. And they all were there at Berea College. And so again, I come from a long line of folk, who were who not only told the story of family, but who were activists in their communities. So my grandfather, great grandfather, in the 30s, and my mom would tell the story. They would catch the bus on a Saturday morning to go into town to buy things, that were family essentials,
Right.
shoes and clothing and things like that. And
Right.
the bus oftentimes would fill up with people. And when the bus filled, this is in the 30s now, when the bus would fill up, then they were told by the bus driver, hey, you all get up out of your seats and stand up and give your seats to nice white people who got on. And Mom would tell the story that my granddad would say, well, what did you pay to ride the bus? I said, a nickel. He said, I paid a nickel too, and we're not getting up. And they would put off the bus. This is in the 30s, 20 years before the historic Rosa Parks sit down. But there were thousands of people like my great grandfather who did things like that. But those kind of stories are the stories. So on the land that we're on here now, okay, that's where these folks, okay, were after emancipation, were making a community, making lives, purchasing property, creating farms. And my grandfather, he was a school teacher, small farmer, the area butcher. He also cut hair. He was also a shoe cobbler. And he and his brother were also owned a blacksmith shop. So they could do a whole bunch of things. And so all those ancestral vibrations are on this land. And as I was telling you, then part of our farm now, it's like a center for education.
Did you know that CFA is a nonprofit organization that supports family farms, equity work, food access, and policy work across Kentucky? If you're interested in supporting any of this work, please go to cfaky.org and go to our donate tab in order to donate or become a member today. We really appreciate any and all help that we get, and it goes back to helping both farmers and consumers across the Bluegrass State. For more information, go to www.cfaky.org. Once again, that's www.cfaky.org. Thank you. And now back to our show.
Before we left on the first break, you mentioned a lot of the history that went on at the property. Can you talk about some of the differences on how you reimagined that same space?
Yeah, well, again, just to be clear, I came back to the farm 10 years ago to do elder care, and that meant two kinds of elder care. Look after my aunt and uncle who lived next door, who were both 90 years old. They're like second parents to me. And the house I live in now is also about 90 years old, but the house was empty. Nobody was living here. So our cousins and mine had like a little meeting of the family, and we thought it would be good to have somebody move back to the farm to look after our aunt and uncle, who were both 90, and to fix up this old house okay, that I live in. That was the reason why I came back. And I spent the first 4 or 5 years doing what I call everyday kinds of elder care. It was a wonderful blessing to do that. But then my cousins, my aunt and uncle, them jokers, would you believe, Vaughn, they died on me? I said, where in the heck are y'all going? Cousin Jimmy, we're 94, 95, we got to cross the Chili Jordan. We got to go to the pearly gate till we got to join. I said, y'all can't leave me here. Anyway, so then I had a little more free time to begin to think about, as you said, reimagining, the farm and what it can mean.
Right.
Right now, the farm, I wear different hats, okay, on the farm. One is that we're doing things, of course, in the ground and a variety of things. One of my first efforts was to create the farm as a habitat for pollinators. We've got about 30 acres here, and there's about 12 acres of the pasture land is under, thanks to the NRCS, part of the USDA, is a 12-acre pollinator habitat and forage area with about 25 different kinds of forbs, meaning grasses, annuals, and perennials, to help create this needed biodiversity. When I was growing up here in this community, those things were all there, but we've been impacted a lot by kind of a thinking to cut down the habitat and do things that causes pollinators to decline.
So in your years of seeing the farm from where it was and where it's at now, and also the community, what are some of the biggest changes that you've noticed?
Oh, well, one is, again, that around the farm here now, we're probably 30 farms that were owned by African Americans, and we were all, again, some fashion related. That's been a huge change, not just in Kentucky, here where I live at, Madison County, but across the state and across the nation. It's like the loss of, we call Black farmland. But we've been blessed, I must say. And on my in-law side of the family in West Kentucky, we own the Martin Acres. We own 1,000 acres. It's been their family since the 1870s or so. So we've been very fortunate to have held on to this property, this land, all those years. That's been a huge change. But what's also changed is that many people who now own the properties are not really farming. They have these big, huge, what I call them McMansions, these big homes. They come in there, they bulldoze down all the trees, all the bushes, and it's just a big house and then 10 acres of grass. I call it green concrete, no biodiversity, which then impacts the decline of pollinators. And pollinators are at the basis of agriculture, okay?
Right.
Over half of our food that we consume requires, pollination, but it's been impacted in all kinds of ways. The huge houses that have just grass, the lack of flowering trees and bushes, the use of the overuse of chemicals and sprays, herbicides, and whatever, all impact pollinators. So we're trying on this land of ours, this family property, to change that scenario. That's why we have, again, about 1/3 of the land is devoted, we call this pollinator conservation project. Even before we did that 3 years ago, I had taken the front of the yard, and this image behind me is one of the images I have growing down here about 40 or 50 different kinds of perennials, where I have flowers, Vaughn, that bloom all year long. I mentioned
Wow.
right now I have in the yard out here now what's called a helleborus, and they must have their own antifreeze, okay? But they're out there
Because it
blooming
has
now,
been cold.
okay? The helleborus is, and pretty soon you'll see here, probably late March, April, you'll see these fields of daffodils. I've got all kinds of trees and bushes, and many of them are medicinal and whatever. Try to again provide not only the beauty, but the this area of great diversity. I'm a beekeeper as well, so the idea of having the pollinator pastures then corresponds as being a beekeeper. And I just harvested, some honey here about a month ago, and so we're hoping that eventually we will be able to take those hives and create our own jar of honey named after, again, our great uncle Atrus Ballew. So you're going to see, the old guy. He lives to be 100 years old, Vaughn, okay? Bless his heart. And we had, by the way, we had 7 folk in our family who were either first generation after emancipation, meaning they were enslaved, or first generation, children who were the children of people who were enslaved. Had 7 folk lived to be 100 years old. And our great uncle who lived here in this house was one of those. So
where's the
I have
well?
a honey jar with his picture on there, okay? And that would be a way to teach again the history about selling the honey that we're harvesting, the beehive, but also retelling his story.
So the question I gotta know is, where's the well at? Where y'all hiding the well? Like,
well, we have 2 ponds on the
fountain
property.
of youth. How do y'all keep everybody?
Well, I think part of the well is it's eating from the land. Okay, eating from talk about local food. Now them foods was doing local food before Kentucky Proud ever was thought of, and before folks like CFA and whoever else and Oak were talking about organic food and local food. Our folk were doing that. Okay, we were right here on these farms during emancipation, after emancipation, farming organically, farming sustainably, cooperatively. Okay, it's how we were doing it, and we were eating largely a diet that was mostly plant-based. Okay, my mom, she would say, "Well, hey, Cousin Jim, she said, well, Jim, you began Good Foods Co-op, and you talk about organic food. Well, we didn't call it that. That's what we were doing, So humans have been farming organically for about 12,000 years. It's only been since World War I and World War II, what we now call conventional farming came in with the use of all kinds of chemicals and herbicides and pesticides has been a recent phenomenon. So, but again, so part of the idea of what was a well was eating really healthy food, okay, working hard, okay,
right,
and having a great community of folk that you could, interact with. The love of people, love of community, living with purpose was what created the well of this really good health of folk, and it's changed a lot. Not only have our farms become sicker, okay, but people have also become sicker. The environment is sicker because we have, as humans, we have adopted this very human-centric, almost Eurocentric worldview that has impacted our lives and health and the environment. So we're trying to change all that right here at the Atrus Ballew Farm.
Farmers Market Support Program Services. Did you know that a program like this exists in the state of Kentucky? If your market has been around for a while, or maybe you are a new and existing market, we offer marketing development. We also offer business development. We want to offer programs as such like capital support to support your market managers. There's a cost share program. We can establish your market with the SNAP EBT program. And lastly, we provide networking. For more information, please contact us at cfaky.org/FMSP. Again, that is cfaky.org/FMSP.
what is the future of Atrus Ballew Farm?
Of course, right on the farm, we have a variety of products that we have been making available here for several years. You mentioned my cousin Tiffany next door, who has every year this women's retreat, has been taking some of the medicinal herbs off the farm, the elderberries, the mint, packaging them up and providing for folk, these kinds of value-added products. I mentioned that, we've been beekeeping for a couple of years, and we see ourselves producing honey, not only for the market, say the farmer's market, and the honey will be named for my dear great uncle Atrus Ballew, who was a centenarian, need to be 100. So he must know something, okay? But we'll have that. And I've been in the household, been growing all kinds of watermelons and tomatoes. I grew last year 15 kinds of tomatoes, about 10 kinds of peppers, 6 or 8 kinds of beans. And those items, rather than going to the market, let's say, I've been taking them to cousins of mine, as well as some of the food banks in the Madison County and the Fayette County area as just a gift and donation to folks who have a need, for some wholesome kinds of fruits and vegetables. We're also on the farm, we see ourselves also as an educational center. So a product, we oftentimes invite people to come here for tours. This past fall, I had some dear friends from UK who brought out a class at UK in Black history that came out and spent some time doing that. And we probably do probably 10 or 12 tours a year with church groups, school groups, and so forth. Yes, and so, and like in April, I'm hosting here on the farm in Berea. I'm hosting about 30 people who be come to the farm from, Harvard, Princeton, American University, University of Vermont, Spelman, Tuskegee, all around the whole project around seeds. I joined about a year and a half ago the Ujamaa Seeds, Ujamaa Farms Cooperative Alliance, and part of our focus is around becoming seed farmers. And so right now on the property, we have a project going on with a UK graduate student who is doing a research project around collard greens, sorghum, and okra, for example. We're part of what's called the Heirloom Collard Project, and we have in our collection, Ujamaa Seeds, about 30 different kinds of okra that we send out to people saying, hey, we want you all to know, not just one kind of okra, we have 30 in our collection, and we ask folks then to grow these out and send them back to our Ujamaa Farms Cooperative to sell in our catalog. So that's part of our product, is like a site for research projects. Okay. We also I do an annual around my birthday in April. I do what's called the butterfly birthdays and butterflies. It's like a weekend experience devoted to butterflies and pollinators. It's very child friendly. Kids come out, parents, and we have the kids get a chance to actually plant things in the garden, in the orchard. I mentioned before, I've got about 30 going on 40 different trees in my orchard. Okay, every kind of tree imaginable: apples, peaches, pears, plums, cherries, and so forth. And you can look at the trees, you can tell, well, those are the trees them folks planted like 10 years ago, and them are the ones they planted last year. Now, so that's kind of what's going on in terms of different kind of products. We've also, this past fall, went to a mushroom workshop and got some mushroom log inoculations. We have on the property different kinds of wooded areas. So part of our plan is to begin to have these supplies of mushrooms that are growing in these wooded areas. And then those products could become items that we sell somewhere at a market, but It could also be an educational workshop. So we're believing in wearing different kinds of hats.
Gotcha.
Yes, having products. Also, I'm a prolific writer. I write probably 8 or 10 different articles a year. I'm working on several books of my own. I've been invited to write a foreword for a republication of a biography of Dr. Carver. So I've taken this farm and its legacy and its history,
right,
and I've taken that to the level of doing documentaries, doing articles. This book here that's called "We Are Each Other's Harvest." I have an essay in this book, and the essay is about this farm and my family and that legacy and my great grandfather's, friendship with people like Carver, Du Bois, so forth.
So you mentioned that you have other universities that come out to the farm and do research projects.
Yes.
What connection has the HBCUs had with your property?
Oh, well, hey, I mean, I'm a believer. I just for a long time, Vaughn. Okay, I've been around since the dinosaurs. I know all kinds of people, so I have, believe me, I have direct connections with most of the universities here in Kentucky. Berea, EKU here in Madison County, UK. I went to school there, worked there 20 years. Like State University, KSU, absolutely. And I've gotten different kinds of support, financial, equipment support. Let's say from Kentucky State, they help fund the expansion of our bee colony, and
Nice.
I'm now the proud, father of about 100,000 bees out here. Okay, and so they've, I've gone. I don't know if it lasts even 15 years or so to the a KSU small farm conference and so forth. I've also got some connections to the Ujamaa Seed Cooperative, connections with Spelman. We were down there this fall, Tuskegee, and so forth. And they'll all be here again in April.
What is the importance? Because you mentioned history. How important is it to have HBCUs involved with farming?
Well, I think it's critical, because as we know, post-emancipation, there was HBCUs all across the South, and in particular, Tuskegee and George Washington Carver, that allowed African Americans to survive and to thrive. It was those institutions that provided that kind of sensibility, a good sensibility. All the things now going on with regenerative agriculture and organic agriculture, what Carver was preaching and writing about, for 50 years, bless his heart. If we'd listened to him, we wouldn't be the problem that we're in now. But again, those HBCUs only provided that sense of agricultural sensibility and great farming practices, but they also provided this educational outlets. As we know, Black folk, couldn't go to the white historically universities. Okay, so it was HBCUs that provided those kinds of platforms of education for our folk to value education and become in their community the kind of leaders, the teachers, the thinkers, the historians were all processed through all because of HBCUs. So now part of our role, like with Deion Sanders, here recently engaging in his I think first college coaching experience at Jackson State, we have to, I think as a people, we have to reinvest in HBCUs, not just money, but time, commitment, these kind of collaborations. So that, I mean, they've been critical, not only in the history of African Americans, they've been critical in the history of America. And now we have to reinvest and love and embrace the current role of HBCUs.
Right. Now, everybody knows this is the Blackberry series, and I have to ask this question. What berry best represents Atrus Ballew Farm and Jim Embry?
Well, man, I don't know why you saved the easy question for last, okay? It's clearly blackberries, okay? Because right here on this farm, when I was growing up, the primary berry that in July usually that we'd go out and pick would be blackberries. And we had to kind of like, arm ourselves with, we used to wear these little wrist bracelets with coal oil, trying to ward off the chiggers, because if you didn't go out there and protect yourself, you might come home with gallons of blackberries, but you would also come home with chiggers and itching. So, so blackberries have just a real clear memory on the farm of how delicious they were. And again, at our house here is where my aunt Patty lived. That she died real young from diabetes. But anyway, but she would make these incredible blackberry cobblers. Okay. And then on the farm here, we would make our own ice cream. We would have these, these freezer units, and we'd be out there churning, the ice cream freezer, make that vanilla ice cream to go on that warm blackberry cobbler. Also, blackberry is important for me because one of the main fruit that was used in my early career of winemaking, okay, was the blackberry. Okay, and so I learned from my great uncle here and my grandmother the process of making wine from the blackberry, and oftentimes, and we were always told, now y'all go out in the field and pick up some blackberries and don't eat them all. Okay,
man, I could imagine. So I know we get into the end of the interview, and I don't want to keep you too long, but is there any one message that you can give any upcoming farmers or people that are inspiring to get into regenerative agriculture?
Well, I would say that the most important question of this century for every human being, not just farmers. And by the way, my friend Wendell Berry says that eating is an agricultural act. So we're all involved in agriculture. We're all eat every day, and we're eating from what farmers are growing. And part of our need is to understand these kind of connections, okay, with agriculture, that we're all part of the agricultural movement and whatever. But I would say that recognize that the land, the flora, the fauna, our ancestors are important parts of our memory, okay? And yes, we need to return to the land in all kinds of ways. Some of us can like me, can come back to some acres of land, but every person needs to find some way to connect with their ancestors and connect with the land, because they're all one and the same.
Well, that's it, folks. And as I always like to say the mantra, real change comes from the ground up. Until next time, peace.